Yeah, they stand by their statements. Do you stand by your statements? Yes. I stand by my statements. We stand by our statements. I'll look back to what I said. What I said was it was reckless abuse of power. Yes, it was a reckless abuse of power. I said that what the narrative that the administration was pushing in the immediacy following this shooting was garbage and false and BS. It was. I stand by every one of those. And, you know, this notion of inflammatory comments, I mean, come on, guys. You know, I dropped an F-bomb. I dropped an F-bomb. They killed somebody. Which one of those is more inflammatory? I'm going with the killing somebody.
They told us it was about safety. They told us it was about law and order. But when federal agents opened fire in Minneapolis, the narrative fell apart. The administration attacked the mayor for his language, for swearing in anger. His response ended the debate instantly. I dropped an F-bomb. They killed somebody. Which one is more inflammatory? Tonight, the fight for the truth. Good evening. We start tonight with a situation that is unfolding right now in the Midwest. It is a story about jurisdiction, about power, and about the very basic definition of accountability in this country. It is happening in Minneapolis, a city that has seen more than its fair share of national attention regarding law enforcement and public trust over the last few years. But this time, the dynamic is different. This is not just a local story. This is a direct confrontation between a city government and the federal administration. We are looking at a transcript of a press conference that took place recently. It features Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey and other state representatives. And if you listen closely to what they are saying, you hear the sound of local officials who have reached their absolute limit. They are describing an intervention by federal agents, U.S. Marshals, IC agents, that resulted in the death of a human being. And the aftermath of that shooting has triggered a battle that goes to the very heart of how justice is supposed to work in America. The core of the dispute right now is about the investigation itself. When a shooting happens, when a life is taken by law enforcement, the standard procedure, the expectation is that there will be an investigation, a real investigation, one that is transparent, one that brings in independent experts to look at the ballistics, to interview the witnesses, to find out exactly what happened. Mayor Frey is demanding that the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, known as the BCA, be at the table. He is not asking for the city to investigate itself. He is not asking for a predetermined outcome. As he explicitly states, the city is not the one conducting the investigation. He wants the state-level experts involved. He points out that the BCA is well equipped to do this work. They have a long track record. They are known for doing thorough investigations. And crucially, as the mayor points out, they have a history of coming to results that cut both ways, sometimes finding culpability and sometimes finding a lack thereof. That is what an independent investigation looks like. It does not start with a conclusion. It starts with the evidence.
By the way, we're not even talking just about full control here. We're talking about being at the table. We're talking about an investigation that includes the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. And for those that may say that we have a predetermined outcome, we are not the ones that are conducting the investigation. The investigation would be conducted by the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. They are well equipped to do it. They have a long track record of doing thorough investigations and, by the way, coming to results that both saw culpability and a lack thereof.
But that is not what is happening here. According to the mayor and state representatives, the federal authorities are blocking that transparency. They are refusing to let the local and state entities be at the table. And this refusal has created a dangerous vacuum of information, a vacuum that is being filled with anger, suspicion, and a rapidly eroding trust in government. The mayor poses a very simple, very haunting question regarding this blockage. He asks, if there is no full independent investigation of this shooting, what will the effect be? He answers it himself. He says it further undermines trust in government, and he makes a point here that is worth pausing on. He says that the quickest way to erode trust in government is to refuse to enforce laws and refuse to hold people accountable to the standards that have been passed. There are laws around this, there are standards around this, and yet the federal administration seems to be operating outside of them. The mayor says that the federal agencies should have no concern about a full and transparent investigation. If they acted correctly, if they followed protocol, they should welcome the scrutiny. They should want the BCA involved. They should want to look at the facts and collect the evidence. But the fact that they are, for some reason, concerned about having other law enforcement involved, specifically the BCA, is described by the mayor as wildly concerning. And this is where the story shifts from a procedural dispute to a political firestorm. Because the Trump administration did not just block the investigation. According to the transcript, they went on the offensive. They attacked the mayor. But they didn't attack him on the facts of the shooting. They didn't attack him on the law. They attacked him for his tone. They pointed to the mayor's comments right after the shooting. They accused him of turning up the temperature in the city. They claimed that his reaction was inflammatory, and specifically, there was a focus on the fact that the mayor used profanity. He swore. He dropped an F-bomb in the heat of the moment. The administration tried to make the story about a bad word. They tried to make the story about the mayor's lack of politeness, and Mayor Frey's response to this is something that you rarely see in modern politics. He didn't apologize. He didn't walk it back. When asked by reporters if he stood by his statements, his answer was immediate. Yes, I stand by my statements. He reiterated exactly what he saw. He called the federal operation a reckless abuse of power. He said that the narrative the administration was pushing immediately following the shooting was garbage and false, and then he addressed the temperature accusation directly. He addressed the complaints about his language, and he put it into a perspective that stops you in your tracks. He told the reporters, "You know, I dropped an F-bomb." He acknowledged it. He said it 3 times. "I dropped an F-bomb. I dropped an F-bomb." And then he delivered the comparison that exposes the absurdity of the administration's focus. He said, "They killed somebody. Which one of those is more inflammatory?" He answered his own question. "I'm going with the killing somebody." It is a moment of absolute moral clarity. On one side, you have a local official using a curse word because he is angry that a resident of his city is dead. On the other side, you have federal agents who took a life, and the administration wants you to be more upset about the word than the bullet. This deflection, this attempt to change the subject, is part of a larger pattern that the mayor and his colleagues are describing. It is a pattern of distortion. It involves not just the aftermath of the shooting, but the justification for the federal presence in the first place. Why were these federal agents in Minneapolis? What was the stated mission? According to Mayor Frey, the administration stated that their reason for coming into cities around the country was safety. They claimed they were there to drive down crime. That is the headline. That is the talking point. But the mayor says, look at the reality. Look at the data. He says, we'll let our statistics speak for the trajectory. And the trajectory is not what the administration promised. The mayor states clearly, they are clearly driving crime up. He points out a chilling fact. Up until the night of this incident, the city hadn't had shootings other than this massive issue of federal presence. He argues that it is their continued exertion of presence in Minneapolis and beyond, because this is not just happening in one city that is causing the problem.
What has this administration stated as their reason for coming into cities around the country? The reason that they've stated, safety, driving down crime. We'll let our statistics speak for the trajectory. They are clearly driving crime up. Up until last night, we hadn't had any shootings in this city other than ICE. Our city is safe. Our city is welcoming. They are making it less so. And so it is a massive issue that they continue to exert their presence in Minneapolis and beyond. By the way, it's not just our city that is feeling the impact. I know that.
So the safety argument, according to the local officials, is false. It is failing on its own terms. Then there is the second argument the administration makes. They say they are pro-business. They say they are there to protect the economy of the city. Mayor Frey calls that claim garbage as well. He admits that his evidence on this is anecdotal, but the impact is visible. He points to the specific corridors of the city where these federal operations are taking place. He mentions East Lake Street. He talks about an 80% reduction in the customer base along that corridor and many others. Think about that. An 80% drop. That is not pro-business. That is a ghost town. The mayor describes the federal impact as massive and detrimental. So, if it is bad for business and it is bad for safety, what is left? The mayor summarizes the situation with a list that is devastating in its breadth. He says this operation is bad for business, it is bad for safety, it is bad for unity, It is bad for democracy, and it is bad for this republic. His conclusion is simple. We want them out.
There are a number of legislators behind me that can speak to that. This administration has also said that they're very pro-business. That's also garbage. I don't have a specific statistic other than anecdotal evidence to point to, but they have had a massive and detrimental impact on a number of corridors throughout our city, including like 80% reductions in customer base along East Lake Street and many other corridors throughout the city. And so bad for business, bad for safety, bad for unity, bad for democracy, and bad for this republic. We want them out.
But getting them out and holding them accountable for what happened while they were there are two very difficult things. And this brings us back to the specific details of the shooting itself and the narrative war that is being waged over the facts. We know from the transcript that there is a specific claim being made by Donald Trump and his allies, including J.D. Vance. They are claiming that the officer involved in the shooting was justified because he was run over by the victim. Donald Trump explicitly said that the victim ran the ICE agent over. This is a specific physical claim. It paints a picture of a violent assault on an officer, of a life-or-death moment where the agent had no choice but to fire. It is the kind of claim that is designed to end the argument. If an agent is run over, the public generally understands that force might be used. But Mayor Frey says there is just one problem with that story. It's not true. And he doesn't just say, "Trust me." He says, "Watch the video." He challenges everyone, the press, the public, to not take his word for it, and to not take the administration's word for it. He says, watch the video from every single angle. He describes the condition of the ICE agent who was supposedly run over, and the description he gives is not of a man who was crushed by a vehicle. Mayor Frey says the agent walked away with a hip injury, but not a serious one. He compares it to the kind of injury you might get from closing a refrigerator door with his hips. He says he was not injured. I've seen worse injuries from doing that. He points out that the agent walked out of there with a hop in his step. The mayor is exasperated. You can hear it in the text. He says, "Give me a break." No, he was not ran over. He is pleading for a return to shared reality. He is asking for a baseline of truth where we look at a video screen and agree on what we are seeing. Can we all see that it wasn't run over?
Don't take my word for it. Don't take their word for it. Watch the video from every single angle. I mean, the ICE agent walked away with a hip injury that he might as well have gotten from closing a refrigerator door with his hips. He was not injured. I've seen worse injuries from doing that. And so give me a break. No, he was not ran over. He walked out of there with a hop in his step.
This discrepancy is why the investigation matters so much. You have the President of the United States and the Vice President claiming an agent was run over. You have the local mayor saying the video shows the agent was barely touched. Who resolves that dispute? Normally, it would be the investigators, it would be the FBI, the BCA, the people who collect the evidence. But we learn from State Representative Jamie Long that something strange happened with the timeline of this investigation. Representative Long explains that originally the BCA, the State Bureau, was invited by the FBI to participate in the investigation jointly. That was the plan. That is the standard. Joint participation. But then, for some reason, they decided to walk away. Or rather, they were pushed away. Representative Long says the local investigators were clearly told by somebody that they couldn't participate anymore. This was a change in direction. The FBI intended originally for them to be there, and then the door was slammed shut. Why? Representative Long points to the rhetoric coming from the top. He notes that you have the President, the Vice President, the FBI Director, and the Director of Homeland Security already coming to conclusions. They have already decided what the story is. They have already decided the agent was run over, even if the video suggests otherwise. And when the leadership has already announced the verdict, it becomes very inconvenient to have local investigators on the ground digging for facts that might contradict that verdict.
And so they were invited by the FBI to participate in the investigation jointly originally. And then for some reason they decided to walk away. We are asking for their full participation as the FBI intended originally. They were clearly told by somebody that they couldn't participate anymore. And when you have the President of the United States, the Vice President, the FBI Director, Director of Homeland Security already coming to conclusions, and then they are told on the ground that they can no longer be involved with local investigators. That causes a lot of concern.
Representative Long explains why this delay, this exclusion, is so dangerous for the truth. He talks about time-sensitive evidence. He talks about memory lapses that happen if you aren't able to interview witnesses right away. Every day that the BCA is kept out of the room is a day that evidence degrades. It is a day that memories fade. It is a day that the official narrative, the garbage narrative as the mayor calls it, has time to set in concrete. The administration seems to be operating under a theory that they are untouchable. And this is another major theme that comes up in this transcript, the concept of immunity. Mayor Frey mentions that it was asserted that because these agents work for the federal government, they somehow have absolute immunity from consequences. The idea is that if you have a badge from the feds, you can do whatever you want, and the local laws don't touch you. Mayor Frey, who is a lawyer himself, rejects this entirely. He says, that's not true in any law school in America. He lists the law schools, Yale, Villanova, anywhere else. He says it simply is not true. The principle is clear. If you break the law, if you do things that are outside the area of what your job responsibilities require, this is a problem and it should be investigated.
That's not true in any law school in America, whether it's Yale or Villanova or anywhere else. That's not true. If you break the law, if you do things that are outside the area of what your job responsibilities require, and this clearly seems to be at the very least, this is great. At the most is what you heard people say back here. This is a problem and it should be investigated.
The suggestion by J.D. Vance and others that there is some kind of blanket immunity is described by the mayor as pretty bizarre and extremely concerning. It is concerning because it implies a tiered system of justice. It implies that federal agents are not subject to the same rules as the citizens they are policing. It implies that they can come into a city, claim to be there for safety, drive crime up, hurt the local economy, shoot a resident, and then claim they are immune from investigation because they work for the president. That is the terrifying picture that is being painted by these officials in Minneapolis. And amidst all this legal and political wrangling, there is the human cost. There is the victim. The transcript mentions Miss Good. It mentions references to Brené de Colgore or Renee. While the exact spelling in the transcript might be subject to the chaos of the moment, the reality of the loss is not. Someone is dead. And the mayor is asked about the victim. He is asked if he can describe his interactions with Miss Good or talk about who she was as a person. And here again, the mayor shows a restraint that contrasts sharply with the administration's approach. He refuses to appropriate her memory for his political defense. He says, it would be completely inappropriate for me to do so because there are other people that really knew her and I did not. He respects the boundary. He respects the loss. He focuses his energy on the fight for the investigation, not on pretending to be a close friend of the victim for the cameras. The contrast between the two sides could not be starker. On one side, you have the Trump administration. They are described in this transcript as pushing false narratives. They are accused of claiming injuries that don't exist. They are accused of driving crime up while claiming to drive it down. They are accused of blocking independent investigators. And they are focused on the inflammatory nature of a swear word used by a mayor. On the other side, you have the local officials. They are asking for the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension to be allowed to do its job. They are asking for the public to watch the video evidence. They are admitting their anger, but keeping the focus on the loss of life. And they are standing by their statements that this was a reckless abuse of power. The mayor's final assessment of the federal presence is that it is bad for this republic. That is a heavy charge. But when you look at the components, the lack of transparency, the asserted immunity, the distortion of facts, it is a charge that requires us to pay attention. The investigation into this shooting is currently in a state of limbo. The FBI and the federal entities are holding the cards. The state of Minnesota and the city of Minneapolis are pounding on the door, demanding to be let in. State Representative Long says they are asking for full participation as the FBI intended originally. They want to go back to the plan before the politics took over, before the conclusions were announced by the White House, because right now the system is broken. When you have a situation where the federal government can come into a city, kill someone, and then essentially investigate themselves while blocking the local authorities, you do not have checks and balances. You have a hierarchy of power that is insulated from the truth. Mayor Frey said it best when he discussed the erosion of trust. He said the quickest way to lose that trust is to refuse to hold accountable people on laws that you pass. Laws are words on paper until they are enforced. If they are enforced selectively, if they are enforced only against some people and not others, they lose their meaning. The F-bomb that the mayor dropped was a moment of raw human frustration. It was the sound of a local leader realizing that the game was rigged. It was the sound of someone realizing that the people in charge of the federal government were more interested in a political narrative than in the actual life of a citizen in his city. They killed somebody, he said. Which one of those is more inflammatory? It is a question that hangs over this entire story. The administration wants you to be offended by the mayor's language. They want you to clutch your pearls because an elected official used a 4-letter word. But the mayor is asking you to look at the other side of the scale. A life is gone. A community is grieving. A business district is empty. And the truth is being hidden behind a wall of federal refusal. The video evidence is there. The witnesses are there. The witnesses are there. The Bureau of Criminal Apprehension is ready to go. The only thing stopping a full, transparent, independent investigation is the refusal of the federal government to allow it. As we watch this develop, we have to ask ourselves what precedents are being set in Minneapolis. If this model of federal intervention where agents are immune, local oversight is blocked, and false narratives are broadcast from the highest levels, if this model is allowed to stand, it will not stay in Minneapolis. It will happen again. Mayor Frey's warning that this is bad for democracy is not hyperbole. It is a description of a mechanical failure in our system of government. Democracy requires accountability. It requires that no one, not even a federal agent, not even the president's enforcement arm, is above the law. When that accountability is removed, when absolute immunity becomes the operating theory, we are in dangerous territory. The local officials in Minneapolis are fighting to pull us back from that territory. They are fighting to get the BCA back to the table. They are fighting to expose the truth. It is a fight that is messy. It is a fight that involves anger and sharp words. But it is fundamentally a fight for the basic concept of justice. We will continue to follow this story. We will continue to watch for updates on whether the BCA is ever allowed to join the investigation. We will continue to look at the evidence as it comes out, and we will continue to compare the official narrative against the reality on the ground. Because as Mayor Frey reminded us, we have eyes, we can watch the video, we can see the difference between a hip injury and a refrigerator door. We can see the difference between a swear word and a killing. And we can decide for ourselves which one is more inflammatory. Thank you for joining us tonight. This story is far from over. The push for answers continues. Good night.